Hello, everyone. Thank you again for coming back for another episode of Within the Cauldron. And today we have my daughter Amy with me.
Hello.
And today we are going to talk to this amazing woman. I mean, I can't tell you how many times I've read her books and everything and watched her on TV. I guess I kind of hunt her down to see what she's on next or something because she's just an amazing woman. Um, so we're going to talk to Michelle Belanger, and she has more than 30 occult books and other topics out there. She has appeared as a psychic on A&E, Paranormal State, and the Osborne Medium Portals to Hell. She is a psychic medium, author, occult expert, presenter, singer, and medium personality. She was featured on A&E Paranormal State. Michelle has published over 30 books and is best known as the author of The Psychic Vampire Codex and The Dictionary of Demons. So let's welcome Michelle.
Hey,
Hi
thank you.
there. Well, I'm so happy that you came on.
Oh,
Thank
thanks for
you.
having me.
Oh, yes. Um, you like I was saying, you're really amazing. I mean, you have done a lot. You have worn so many hats in your life already. I can't wait to see what your future projects will bring you and everything. But we want to talk about your early experience. And Amy, you want to say that question? Oh, well, me want me to?
Yeah, you
Okay.
go ahead. Go
Okay.
ahead. Don't be shy.
So you mentioned growing up in a haunted town in Ohio. And how did these early experience shape your path into the occult and the paranormal research?
Well, I grew up in a strange town with a strange history. We celebrate the return of turkey vultures every year around the Ides of March. It's a weird spring equinox like celebration. So a vulture was my my school mascot,
It is
which is
interesting.
just weird. We had a haunted library. And there were enough stories and experiences and houses that had weird experiences that, like, going to public school, even most of the other students, even like the jocks and the normals, probably had some run in with something weird. And so the first thing is that it was normal for me. Like, there wasn't anything unusual about having abilities or like being curious about them. My public school actually offered parapsychology as a Saturday enrichment course. I mean, there were many other ones, dissection and musical theory and wargaming with miniatures. It was a whole thing. But I got to take parapsychology 2 years in a row in fourth and fifth grade, and that was really formative for me. It was one of the teacher's father-in-law who was. I think he was Scottish, but he was a member of the Society for Psychical Research, and so we learned all kinds of fun stuff. We got to do experiments. Uh, so I don't know. I This was just a path that I was on from a very early age. It helped
Yeah.
also that my family has abilities, and so that wasn't an unusual thing. Psychic abilities ran in the family. They were talked about openly. Ghostly experiences were talked about openly. Nobody was shamed for talking about it.
Mm-hmm. Wow.
That's
Um,
that's kind of been like intriguing. Like I understand that because I kind of had like paranormal experiences like
we
as a
lived in
small
yeah,
child, and
we lived
the
in a haunted
town we
house.
lived in was kind of like haunted.
Yeah.
So
Oh yeah, it was. Um, I'll probably could write a book about those stories. uh, so you are re-released. Oh, you did. I should say you did already in September 2024. You re-release the Psychic Vampire Codex book.
Mhm.
Okay. Now, did you do that for your fans? Because I want to say thank you for that. Because and you came a long ways because that was written when you was 2021 and you were still in college, wasn't you? Majoring in religious studies.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah.
that was back in 94, I think, 93, 94. And so how did that book first came about? Was it just your interest, your research, or did somebody say, hey, you should write that book?
It was my experiences. So when I went to college, I found like, you know, the budding movement of witches and Wicca, and some of it like appealed to me. Some of it answered some of my experiences, but there was another thread of how my particular relationship with energy worked. And I didn't find any books that weren't just about like psychic vampires bad, here's how to protect yourself. So I did that thing that, you know, everybody tells you to do: write the book that you need, write the book that you want. And so, yeah, 94, I started it when I was 19. I wasn't trying to be a new Mary Shelley, I swear. It was just, that was what I was immersed in at the time. You can definitely see my school influence with the college courses in comparative religious studies, because there's a lot of stuff drawn from you know, the world religions and world theology, and especially a lot of ideas of Hindu pranayama, yoga, and still with like its own spin of, this is how I experience the world. I don't know if this is how anybody else experiences the world, but let me put it together and share it and see if it speaks to people. And even if it doesn't speak to you, it's still a window into a particular type of energy work. You got muted.
Muted yourself.
Sorry.
No, it's okay.
It happens.
I'm not as good of a lip reader, so.
It's like, no, you know how cats are. They get real close to your keyboard and you're like, oh my gosh, you know, I got to do this before they start doing something.
Mhm.
You know, with three of them, it goes nuts sometimes.
Yeah, multiple kids in the house. It
But
happens.
you have a question, don't you?
So after like extensive work in your nonfiction, what motivated your shift to urban fantasy with the Shadow Side series?
I had aspired to be a novelist long before I ended up having nonfiction stuff published. It was just the nonfiction stuff needed to be published. Like, that was the time where it had to be out. So I actually sidelined my my fiction career to focus on the nonfiction, and there was such a demand for it that like I just didn't have time. And I hit a point in my life where I had a window of opportunity to just tell stories. And the Shadow Side, it's urban fantasy. Obviously, it's a story, but also one of the things that I love about storytelling is you can take real stuff and weave it into the world building and sort of go, what if? Like, if this particular ability were like super turned up, what would that look like? And the Shadow Side was also a way of me trying to express to people how it feels to do the psychic work that I do, like what it looks like to me. So the main character, Zach, when he like moves between like the physical reality and the shadow side, the way I describe the shadow side, the way that there's like these layers of echo and memory and like kind of things remembered in spaces, and it's sort of lightless and yet you can still see, that's very much how I experience my psychic stuff, like the way it's saturated with emotion.
Cool.
That's really interesting.
Yeah.
I kind of like that because, you know, your real life experiences and then intertwining it with.
I know.
Well,
Yeah.
the really neat thing is I got to meet a number of my idols, like the people that I grew up reading, who were fiction writers. And at the time I was like, I think this person like actually knows. But you know, you always think maybe you're reading too much into it, maybe.
Yeah.
But then I got to meet them and find that no, they were practitioners, like channelers and psychics and witches. One I can call out, Laurel K. Hamilton, who's very open about it. A few I can't.
Yeah.
But finding that fiction storytelling is a powerful way of disseminating information and inspiring people, like giving you like this imaginative focus to channel the real abilities, and to put information out there and spark curiosity. When you read a fiction book, knowing that it's fiction, it may talk about something, and if you're made curious about it, you should do more research and see if it's based somewhere. In fact, if there's something that you can learn more, if it speaks deeply to you.
Mhm.
My cousin Nico and I call that rabbit holes that we go down.
I love rabbit
Yeah.
holes.
And then it's hard to get us back out. Do you want to ask the next one?
You go ahead.
Just ask what we want.
Okay. She wants me to ask questions then. Okay, so just give me a second here. Okay, so I want to know about your thoughts on the Ouija boards.
Or like different like divination items. Like I don't know if you use them for like, I know you've been on like paranormal investigations or anything. Do you ever like intertwine your craft with your investigations? Like I know a lot of people use like high dollar like equipment and stuff. Like I've always been exposed to the paranormal since I've been a young child, and I've just never used them. I just always used myself.
Mm-hmm.
I think that you're
Yeah.
a powerful tool and
The
my
same.
own imagination. So
Yeah.
I don't know your views on that.
No, it's the same for me. Like the tech works for some people, but it's not really the stuff that speaks to me.
Mhm.
When I first got involved in paranormal investigation 30 plus years ago, like actually the first group I worked with was the Avalon Foundation out of here in Northeast Ohio,
Yeah.
founded by a fellow named Nick Ryder. And that was 96, 97 maybe. And it was really not common for people to be witchcrafty and also a paranormal investigator. There was sort of a split between things.
Yeah.
And so I was unusual in the fact that I was bringing all of the tools of magic and witchcraft to paranormal investigation. And also the attitudes, because although paranormal investigators were aware of Ouija boards, most of their approach with it was sort of informed by the Warrens and, the movie The Exorcist, where Ouija boards are portals to hell, and, it's terrible things are going to happen. You're going to be possessed. And it's just another tool.
Yeah.
And it's no different than a K2 meter or a pendulum, or honestly just sitting there and inviting the spirits to communicate with you. It's just the PR that it's had, like the stories that have been told about it. So when I do investigations, I encourage people to find whatever tools work for them. But much like you, I am my best sensing device. It's all me. And in the same way that one should approach a Ouija board or a spirit box with a certain measure of this might work, and also we know that there are levels of fallibility. The same stuff for psychic abilities. Like a psychic perceptions of a location in a paranormal investigation are only as good as the psychic's objectivity. And that's actually what you have to learn and hone. A lot of people think that like the real work is honing the psychic ability, but the real work is learning how to judge what it is you're perceiving and then articulate it in a way where you're not over-interpreting or skewing it, or trying to see things that aren't there because you want them to be there.
I completely understand that. I know someone who a little bit dramatic and thinks that she's seeing things or hearing things that's not there. And I'm like, I've been around spirits since I've been a little girl. And I'm like, you're fine. Trust me. When you have that negative energy in a room with you, it hits you like a brick wall. You know it's there. Sometimes it will try to hide it, but like, I think that's something that I've had to struggle with, is what to open myself to and what not to.
Yes. I know for Center Paranormal teams, they sometimes they create their own thought form, and they assume, oh my gosh, something's here.
Yeah.
Or,
well,
also, a lot of assumptions too.
I feel like that
what
happens
they do
with a lot of like children and teenagers with abilities. Sometimes they
Mhm.
create thought forms without
Yes.
realizing it.
Yes.
Yeah, in working with the paranormal community for as many decades as I have, I'm really thrilled that in the past couple of years, like maybe the past 10 years or so, they've started to actually recognize the idea of thought forms, egregores, the way that we can, in fact,
Yeah.
create and construct things that are going to act like spirits, are perceptible like spirits. You can pick them up on all the same machines, but it's a little bit like spirit AI. It's a thing that we've just sort of fed a lot of stuff into, and it will work off of its programming.
Yes.
Every once in a while, they sort of take on a life of their own. I've run into some things that I think started off as thought forms, as constructs, and are now just genuinely like off there in the world doing their own thing. Those are fascinating. Like
that
really,
is.
it really
I
raises
couldn't.
cool questions about like, what is the nature of being and sentience? Like where does it start? What sparks that?
Yeah. I know you was talking about years ago your first paranormal team. So, do you remember that experience you had the very first time? Can you tell us about it?
Yeah, Nick had reached out to me. There used to be an Art Bell discussion group that would meet at like the local Denny's, and a couple of other places. And they would get together and do like they'd have a guest speaker, and Nick and I crossed paths through that. They had me as a speaker, he was a speaker, yada yada yada. So he invited me to go to. There's a location in Cleveland called Gray's Armory, and it's fairly haunted. It's an old like militia. A Cleveland militia was there, like one of the sort of things. And there's a lot of history to it. And what he wanted to do was basically have he was an engineer. So he had his tech and I had my psychic stuff. And this was sort of the first time that we did let's see if the psychic perceptions line up with what the tech is picking up, or can the tech pick up what the psychic is picking up. So like he didn't tell me what was going on with the place. I tried to not research anything about it, and if I was perceiving something, he would start to like move his various gadgets in it, and we compared, and it was pretty cool.
That is really cool.
Yeah,
because it kind of gives you like, I know as someone, I don't like identify as like anything with like things I've seen and stuff, like if I'm psychic or medium or anything like that. I just know I've had experiences and that's just where I go with it. But like it's always nice when you have an experience and then someone else can say, yes, this is what's happening, especially because like sometimes you feel so alone in that experience. So I think that's amazing.
I think you can probably still dig up a very old article from when I spoke at Slippery Rock University where I said, I don't like being called a psychic. Like this is before Paranormal State where they're just like, you're a psychic medium. And I'm like, if that's the word that you're going to have to use, fine, whatever. Like there was a time with Paranormal State where they're like, well, what do we call you? And I'm like, mystic, shaman. They're like, pick something. And so they picked for me. But the reason I didn't like that, same thing for you. I think everybody has these abilities. Like everybody has levels of sensitivity. It's just a matter of how a person, it's what relationship you have with it. That's your relationship of belief, your relationship of trust, what you grew up with in terms of what you're willing to accept, and how comfortable you are exploring them.
Yeah. I feel like with me, like I'm still like, I feel like with me, I had a lot of experiences as a child and as a teenager that was kind of like traumatic in the paranormal field. So I'm still healing from that because a lot of people don't talk about like paranormal trauma. So I'm still healing from that. And I had a really bad experience last year where I had a spirit kind of like obsessed with me and it was unhealthy.
Yeah.
So now I'm just trying to like, I kind of like blocked myself a little bit, if you know what I mean.
No,
especially because I have small children.
Yeah.
With Paranormal State, he's only on there a few times on camera, but we actually worked with a psychologist. And one of the things that he would do is for families where, especially where young children were having experiences that were just very emotionally upsetting, he was there to let them talk about that, find a way to process it. I know I used him because I had effectively PTSD from a reading that I did. So for several readings after that one, every time I closed my eyes, it would just flash back to that one. I put the blindfold on and I couldn't concentrate on where I was at because they didn't tell me. I mean, that was the whole thing. Like, but it was in Southern Ohio And 3 weeks before I walked onto this space, a woman had hung herself in the garage.
Oh my God.
no.
And they walked me through that.
And you probably felt all of that.
Everything. Everything. And what led her to that was, I mean, it was terrible. And the harder thing is doing a reading for a lot of hauntings are tied with tragedy and violence and bad things. But when there's decades between you, 100 years between you, it's easier to keep a separation in your head when you're perceiving it. This was someone who lived in my same state. She was close to my same age. Like, all of her feelings, like all of her cultural touchstones, everything was really similar and resonant. So it was very hard to separate her echoes of emotion from myself.
Yeah.
So I guess what I'm saying with that is, if you have the opportunity to have an open-minded therapist or counselor where you can talk about it and just like work through it, like, that is legitimately also trauma that you need to find some way to work out, to sort out, and talking about it helps.
I fully agree. Like, we did shadow work for a discussion in my mom and our family group, and we talked a lot about like paranormal trauma, because a lot of people just don't talk about it. They just have like an experience and they're done with it. And we're like, we can talk it through if you're open to it, and if you want to go back to, you know, opening yourself up, you can.
I'm really fortunate. I have this amazing therapist who's also an energy worker, and I get premonitions. I get visionary stuff. I definitely inherited it from my grandmother. And sometimes that's really hard because it's stuff that you can't stop, especially the big stuff. And there's always a little bit of guilt that comes with that. So she's been really, really good for me to just talk it out when there's a dream that, like, you know, because there's a lot going on in the world. And just being like, but I can't stop it. Like, and realizing that sometimes you're not supposed to. It's not like the universe is like tapping you to be the chosen one to like go off and do it. Like, you just happen to be sensitive enough to pick up that there are things happening.
You can relate to that, because she had a dream when she was pregnant with me, and that her one of her close friends passed away like the next day, and she knew every detail of it, and she called the mother and be like, hey, is this person okay? And she's like, how do you know everything? And the mother ended up blaming her because she couldn't stop it. But she's like, I was sleeping, so there's nothing I could have done.
That's happened a few times. When I was pregnant with Amy, almost puppy, like every other week, it was something that I will call somebody and says, hey, you know, stay away from this and everything. It was all we can.
And that was when the call dropped. There you go.
There we go. Then we're back. Yeah. So, you know, there for a while, everybody was kind of like afraid of me. If I call them up, they're like, don't call me. You know? You're going to give me bad news or something. But yeah, it kind of took a toll on me, just like when I did a reading, and for a person who just thought it was fun and games. And I told them, oh, it's not really fun and games. And it came true. And then she blamed me of not telling her. And I was like, I did tell you. You just didn't listen. So yeah, it plays a mind game on you, because it's where you don't want to talk to nobody. You don't want to tell nobody anything because you're too afraid.
One of the things
past that now.
One of the things that stuck with me, my grandmother, my maternal grandmother raised me. She would have been 101 this past Mother's Day.
That's a long way.
We had a complicated relationship, but she taught me a lot about my psychic abilities. She had premonitions her entire life, and had a very, very fraught relationship with it. The
Mm-hmm.
experience that she had when she was young was she had a very vivid dream about the death of a family friend, and it was accurate, and it was right around the same time that it happened. And without having any kind of support or like knowledge about how these abilities work, she spent a good portion of her childhood thinking that somehow she had caused it. Not that she was
Mhm.
sensitive to this thing happening, but somehow by having the dream, having the thought that she was responsible.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And like learning to thread that needle of the sense of what is your responsibility, what is your relationship to these events? Are you merely a witness? Are you somehow being tapped to try to interfere? For
Mhm.
me, I think it's just you're like a radio tower.
Yeah.
There are
That's why I call her a
channel.
lighthouse. Yeah.
Yeah, you're picking up a channel.
Mhm.
And there's nothing more or less than the fact that you just happen to hear that something's going to happen.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And it could just be his spirit saying, "Hey."
Yeah.
That's what
Yeah.
I've talked to her about too, because
Yeah.
I have children who have abilities, and I had to talk to my child who has a lot of dreams that come true. And like he announced my whole pregnancy with my last child before I even knew I was pregnant. I'm like, we need to have a discussion about dreams before you announce them to the world.
Yeah. Especially to your teacher.
Yeah, no, it's like learning those boundaries is important.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, that was actually the hardest thing for me to learn growing up as a kid, because it was all so normal that I just like, go blabbing about everything, because that's just what you do. But yeah, it's psychic kids are an interesting quandary, because you have to find some way to never make them feel ashamed of their abilities, like let them like trust the experience, but also let them know that it's not necessarily something to share with everybody all the time.
Yeah.
Right.
I'm also teaching them like how to protect themselves, because they are vulnerable, because they are small children, and
Very.
not every spirit has the best intention for you.
Yeah, and then you can't just like run up to somebody and be like, "Hey, I see an angel behind you." Like,
Yeah.
everyone wants to know.
Or my 2-year-old likes to call spirits monsters. I'm like, not every spirit's a monster.
Yeah. I know I saw YouTube last, I don't know, 8 months maybe ago. He was talking about demons versus negative entities. Okay, so what is the difference for our audience in case they kind of like, what's she talking about?
I've got a very strict like checklist for, do I call it demonic? Now, the first thing is I don't think demons, or the idea of demons, predate Christianity and even Judaism. So I don't think that when you say the word demon, when I say the word demon, I'm not talking about Lucifer, wars in heaven, fallen angels, anything like that. I'm talking about a class of spirits that are very intelligent. They are non-human. They have never been human. It's my personal belief that they have a difficult time incarnating, which is why they are more likely to attach themselves to a person in order to try to experience this world.
Yeah.
And there's two different types, or two different ways that they can go. They don't really fit here. They don't fit here well. They don't follow the same rules. So they're either so alien that what their motivations are and how they interact are just uncanny, just wrong. And they don't understand the kind of damage that they're doing. And there are some that are just straight up malevolent, like they really enjoy and feed off of the terror and the fear and the negative emotions of people. So like that checklist is non-human, hyper intelligent, and malevolent, or at least like alien and uncanny in a way that does not mesh with our idea of what is good and positive. They have a tendency to gravitate toward people. They're fascinated with people. They experience the world through us to some extent, which means that they will, there's obsession and possession, where they'll like kind of overshadow a person, like kind of attach to them and try to.
Do they like kind of like toy with you?
They can. I've seen some that like the whole goal is like they really just want to have a body. and they can't get it through the old-fashioned means, and so they find a way to pop around in a person.
Yeah.
Now,
Mhm.
that said, there are classes of spirits that are still called demons, like in the Goetia, the 72 Goetic demons aren't
Mhm.
exactly demons. They
They're like lower class demons, you would consider.
Mhm.
Well, actually, digging all the way into the roots of that tradition, they are probably um, the deities assigned to the decans of the zodiac. They're spirits that are written about in really ancient Egyptian stuff. So they are a class of being that eventually became classed as a demon, but they're
Mhm.
more tutelary spirits. They're definitely not human. They're definitely very different from us, but they're
Mhm.
not necessarily malevolent. They just have a different set of rules. Those are spirits that can be worked with and communicated with, but with
Mhm.
great caution, because they are big. They don't understand like how fragile we are.
Mhm.
It's sort of like taking a lion into your house and treating it like a house cat. You don't want to do
Yeah.
that.
No, I don't. I love cats, but no, thank you.
Yeah.
So that might be cute when this
No, I don't think there's anything cute about that.
The babies are cute.
No, because well,
They grow
last
up.
year my cousin Nico, he had a haunted doll, and I do TikTok. Well, I used to do TikTok, and so did he did, and we would have like a paranormal safe space. So I never really do like investigations really anymore because
Mhm.
like I just with having the past I've had with spirits, I'm just like I'm good. You know, I dipped my toes in it. I'm okay. So we did a ghost box session,
Mhm.
and it turned out the spirit didn't have the best intentions. And what they told what he was told about the doll wasn't true, and it turned out to be more malicious and wanted to play around, and it didn't care about small children or babies or anything like that. It's still going to attack you. So it took us to get like a specialist
Mhm.
to come and be involved and to basically like exorcise the doll and to just send it back to where it was, because it just wanted to play in a dark way, if you know what I mean.
Mhm.
I want to get some of the comments here.
Yeah.
Our cousin Nico, he's supposed to come on, and he had an appointment today that didn't
Yeah.
go as planned. So he's sorry that he couldn't make it. And we're sorry that he can't be
Yeah,
here
he
either.
has to have it.
So.
He is very allergic to like a lot of things, and if he doesn't have it, he could die. So
So,
I'd rather him just to be alive.
Yeah. No, that's important.
Sherry from the UK,
Mm.
one of our spirit sisters, she says it can be frustrating, but I have learned to go with it. You do feel a lot, and people those can be hard to process.
Nope. And we froze again. I don't know if I'm frozen or not, but hello to PWI spiritual investigators. And yeah, people's views can be hard to process, and always it's always an interesting path to navigate with what you pick up and like how to communicate, and trying to find a way to meet people where they're at, as opposed to impose upon them where you're at.
Yes, come back. Yep, we're back. Boy,
Sorry, I live in the middle of nowhere.
No, it's okay.
I'm surrounded by cornfields.
Yeah. But William says hi to the Scottish Hills in the midnight hour from the Louisiana swamps at dinner hour.
That covers all the time zones, huh?
Yeah. So I'm really glad that everybody has joined us and everything. With she keeps moving my notes around here. With the Psychic Energy Codex, can you elaborate on the core teachings of that book and how it relates to today?
I wanted to come up with a sort of my quantum field theory of how magic and psychic abilities and everything works. And for me, it comes down to energy, whatever you want to call that, like whether it's psi or prana or chi, it's this non-physical force that's tied to breath and life. And it's what we're picking up on that leaves impressions and emotional information in places. It's what spirits are made up of, and it's what moves through us. It's what we move in order to do healing work. It's what we take if we're taking energy from people with a psychic attack or something otherwise. And so the Psychic Energy Codex was kind of the prequel to the Vampire Codex. I'd gotten a lot of energy workers who read the Psychic Vampire Codex, and they were like, we love the energy work in here, but we're not vampires. And that part doesn't appeal to us. Could you write a book that just goes into how you perceive energy working? And so one of the goals with writing that book was to also create a book on energy work that you could just hand to your relative who might not be into it. Like, you know, you're an energy worker, but you got a mom who's at least a little open-minded, isn't going to burn you at the stake, but doesn't understand what you're talking about. And you can just be like, here, mom, read this book.
Yeah.
And it walks you through the concept of just how this is something that we all do. Like, everybody has walked into a room where people were arguing, and the people aren't in there arguing anymore, but you can feel something. Like there's information on the air, there's emotions on the
like
air,
and there.
Yeah, and that energy, that word that we're using for energy is what is carrying that data, is carrying that information. It's something that we have a lot more power to perceive, influence, generate, and move than we give ourselves credit for.
Yeah, I think it's an amazing book.
Another book that I really like is The Dictionary of Demons.
That one I have a lot of fun with.
Oh, did you? Well, do tell, because I like it. I share it with my coven brothers and sisters, and
well, we also talked about it.
We also talked about it. Well, we talked about in a Discord discussion that we have with within the Cauldron too, as well, because when you mention something about demons or demonology, everybody kind of like tense up.
Oh yeah,
it's like to get really afraid of it or something. So what was your approach when you did the Dictionary of Demons?
It was inspired by that fear that a lot of folks for the audience of Paranormal State had. The very speaking of a name could somehow summon something and cause it to follow you, when the exact opposite is true. The names have power, and traditionally, knowing the names gives you power over the entity, whether it's a demon or otherwise. So that book was my place where I got to take my witchy side and my psychic and my paranormal side, as well as my academic side, and mash them all together and be like, here is the mythology and the folklore. Here are the stories that we have told for hundreds of years about these. Here's where they go all the way back to biblical and pre-biblical times. Here's why we call them demons. Here's why we fear them. And here's why we shouldn't.
Right.
Yeah. I think that's amazing though, because like what we do within the Cauldron too is, you know, we want to educate people so they don't have fear. Even we invite people who are different paths, like Christian and stuff like that, and we also have people in the group who are Christian and a witch, and how they intertwine their craft with Bible verses and stuff like that too.
We have let me see, here you go, from Sherry. She wants to know, what's your views on the Fae?
Half of my ancestry is Irish. I grew up with a lot of stories and some family traditions of offerings. The first thing is, you don't fuck with fairies. You take them very seriously. Do not, in some ways, I find them actually things to be as cautious, if not more cautious about, than demons, because they're playful and mischievous, and you don't want to just randomly invite them into your house because you've been sold on the idea of Tinkerbell is cute.
I've always I worked with fairies when I was younger. I did a lot of fairy magic, and I always felt like they were kind of like protectors for like the small children.
They
I guess,
can be, and
like,
but they're a wild power. There's something that you
Mhm.
should approach. They have rules,
Mhm.
and you
Mhm.
should be polite. You should never make demands.
Yeah.
There are there's a certain type of etiquette that they expect. Many of those are unwritten rules of etiquette, and you uh, stumble into them at your peril.
Yeah.
I
Mhm.
absolutely believe in fae, fairies, whatever you want to call them. The place where I live and grew up, the woods out here are full
Mhm.
of these strange wild powers, and I have what feels like a very old connection. Alliance seems too presumptive, but a connection and a relationship with them. And it seems like that's something that ran in that side of the family. Uh, my advice is, do not think that they're cute or just
Mhm.
things to play with.
Yeah,
Um,
I agree.
they, you're right on kids. So I live at the end of a cul-de-sac in
Mhm.
suburbia in Ohio, and there's two lovely the girls that live next door. And when they were much younger, we have a rewilded yard, and the girls quite spontaneously decided to set up a fairy altar on one of our rocks. Now, like I wasn't teaching them anything. Like they just, one of them was just talking to the fairies. Um, and kids seem to have an unfettered connection.
Yeah.
And I think it's their innocence and the purity of intention that I think the fae relate to.
Yeah.
The way that children look at the world, in what seems to adults as a very simplistic way, but is more
Mhm.
Mhm.
just wild, is just the way the world really works on some sort of fundamental natural way. And yeah, I pretty sure she really was talking to fairies, and did not mess up with the altar.
I felt like they kind of like guided me as like a child because I'm like leaving offerings for them. My mom's like, "What are you doing?" I'm like, "Oh, you know the fairies,"
Mhm.
and I'm like, "You know they protect me." But I also feel like a child that was sensitive. There, I lived in a very haunted house, so I
Mhm.
felt like they were like my guardians in
Yeah,
a
looking
way.
out for you.
Yeah.
So Sherry from the UK, she have seen 5 years old. I've got a good relationship and understanding of them. I like to see people's views. I've got footage of my play for dawns. She does.
Mm.
She has a footage of her fairy named Primrose, and it's amazing. It really is. Um, you would see and you have to see it again because it's like, oh wow.
Well, I feel like anytime you get like any like evidence that's paranormal, it's kind of
Yeah.
amazing.
And from William, he says,
Mm.
we're in Ohio. My wife lives in Northeast Ohio.
The closest city to me, the big city, is Cleveland. So
Even
I grew up with, and that's actually why the Shadow
oh,
Side
yeah.
series is set in Cleveland. Like I love the
Mhm.
history of Cleveland, and especially its mob ties that don't get talked about a lot.
Yeah, I've never heard of the ties to Ohio. Like that's kind of interesting though.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Um,
Elliot Ness, who was, made his name busting up the mob in Chicago, they moved him to Cleveland after that to try to bust up the mobs in Ohio, in Cleveland, and he didn't. He
Mhm.
kind of died in obscurity because of a really cool bit of true crime stuff called the Torso Murders. I will not rabbit hole us yet, but if you want to go down a rabbit hole, it's a fun one and creepy.
Okay, I'll have to go down that because I love
Yeah.
murder mysteries.
Yeah.
So
yeah, she
Cleveland had
does.
its own Jack the Ripper, basically.
that's very interesting. I'll have to look into it.
Since cousin Nico has an appointment that's taking longer than what he expected, he does have some questions that he would like to know.
Mhm.
First, about the psychic vampire. Um, as a self-identified psychic vampire, how do you define this identity, and what are the spiritual implications?
So, a psychic vampire is someone who needs to regularly and actively take human vital energy in order to maintain their mental, emotional, and spiritual well being. Now everybody takes and gives energy, so like that's on the table. Like witches work with energy, psychics work with energy.
Yeah.
Even people who don't believe in energy, like this is just how we interface with one another and reality. The difference for psychic vampires is there is a deficit. They need more, or they burn through more. And so there's noticeably more that they need to take in, and they're usually fairly limited in the types, because your average person can go for a walk in the woods and get everything that they need.
Yeah.
There's a lot of theories and implications. One of the most compelling ones is that, you know, some people who are psychic vampires maybe have a different soul type, maybe weren't from here originally, maybe don't interface really well with all of the things that ordinarily support other people. It can be a physical thing, and it is a way of just dealing with chronic illness. And if you have enough psychic ability, you just find a way to keep your body running. I've met folks who have multiple different reasons, and there's whole communities of people like this. The reason that I wrote the book that I did is, you know, 30 years ago, 40 years ago, psychic vampire was just a bad word. Like it was, you saw it come into the parlance of occultism and psychicism in the 1800s. So in the flying rolls of the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn, they have a couple of instructional texts about recognizing people who are psychic vampires and how to protect yourself from them. And somebody who's not aware of what they are, or is aware and is not ethical, is a problem. Like that, this is somebody who has an innate ability to perceive energy and work with it. They can pick up your energy, they can take your energy, they can use their energy to have influence over you. One of my favorite little bits of actual vampire trivia is Bram Stoker, who wrote Dracula, was connected with the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn. He was well aware of their teachings about psychic vampires, and the person he based Dracula off of, that he wanted to play Dracula as a stage play, was the actor he managed, Sir Henry Irving. And Irving checked every box for what they saw as a psychic vampire back then. It's why Dracula has this mesmeric personality, sort of like dominating personality, this charisma that you can't quite
like
capture.
Personality,
So he's my favorite thing, a fiction writer taking elements of real experiences that he doesn't have better context for and working through it in his fiction.
That's really fascinating. I'll have to tell my dad. He's a huge Dracula fan. So I was like watching Dark Shadows too when I was younger. Vampires. We love
the Ben Cross remake in the 90s, or the old school one.
It was the old school one, like black and white.
Yeah, no,
I remember watching it as like a small child.
Yeah.
And you are right about the reputation of like psychic vampires. I remember being a young child and going to pagan events and people whispering, going, "Watch out for the psychic vampire."
Oh yeah, but it was always so scared about
dude, in the 90s, because I've always been open about it, but there were covens that were like, I had one friend in Milwaukee who, when they found out that he was friends with me, his coven banned him because they were convinced that I was going to suck all of their power through him just when he was in his circle. And I'm like, first of all, I don't care.
One of my
I've got my own life to live over here. I'm not.
One of my favorite witches is a psychic vampire. So I always tell people to, they don't like him too bad.
Well, the other thing is like where we kind of think that if you're one thing, you can't be anything else. I practice witchcraft. I am a psychic. Psychic vampirism is a thing that I have, that I am. Psychic vampire, or a vampire, can be a magical identity in the same way that a witch is a magical identity.
Yes.
And for some people it is part of their spirituality and their religious expression, and for some people it's just a quality, a characteristic they have, like being left-handed.
Right.
I agree. Right. That's why our group is so important, because we want everybody from all paths. Just
True.
Maybe if you're not ignorant on the topic, then you can open up to it more, and more people can be accepted.
Well, it's like any other type of magic or energy work or psychic stuff. As long as you do it with consent, it's fine.
Yes, I agree.
That is my husband. We used to have date nights, and we used to go out, play pool, or just have a drink or a movie. And one time we was just at some friend's house, and he just reached over, took my wrist, and he sucked blood through my wrist. He freaked everybody out.
Who
They're
did that?
like, your dad did.
Oh, I didn't even know that. I was like,
well, you was
what
a
kind of
kid.
kink is that into right now?
And he did that to my neck one time, and he actually broke a vein. He didn't bite it; he just sucked it. I mean, he just had good suction power, I guess.
You don't even know about your father.
And
Dad sucks. Who knew?
when I went to the doctor and told the doctor what happened, he gave me and my husband the most weirdest look. I mean, he's just like, "Are you a vampire?"
Wasn't that like in the 90s?
Yeah, that was in the 90s.
Yeah,
So,
yeah, of course.
but anyway, that's probably TMI. But
it was the 90s. We did a lot of weird things.
It was the 90s. We was all crazy then. So
the club scene was lit. I will say that.
Yes.
We had a genuine vampire club out here in Cleveland called Club Tier that had there was the goth club, and then there was the VIP area, which was all of the rest of us who could just kind of go and hang out and talk about stuff. And just vampire clubs were a thing that actually existed.
I don't think that's going to be happening in Iowa.
Probably not.
No,
Probably.
and not in 2025. I mean, there's so many reasons.
Yeah, I like to.
Too much going on here right now that we need to get like basic things like.
I mean, we're basically in the Satanic Panic 2.0. Like, we really just need to like.
Well, I was talking because I was just in Salem, and I talked to a witch there, and she was telling me how she's scared right now.
Oh no, the stuff that I lived through in the late 80s and early 90s, like I see so much of it coming back. Like I remember friends who had their kids taken away for no reason beyond the fact that they had a Wiccan, not even satanic, but just happy little like love god, like just an earth goddess. But that was satanic enough. Like there was bad stuff, really, really bad stuff that happened. And the most important thing is to have a strong support system, to like look out for one another, to have good lines of communication, and to understand that not everybody's going to be cool with us, and we need to make sure that we take care of ourselves.
I agree. I just told her, we just have to keep being there for each other, empower each other, and be loud right now, because
that's what.
Otherwise, it will be like that.
Yeah. And guard the information, find ways to communicate. It was another reason why people would often put stuff in fiction, because there was a time where you couldn't write a witchcraft book. And you certainly couldn't sell and have a publisher pick it up. So like that was often your only option to communicate really important key ideas. And the zines were another big thing in the 80s and 90s. Like it was a way of getting stuff out there and sharing information, and like learning how to go back to that isn't a terrible idea.
I used to like write in runes and like notes in high school to my friends, so the teachers wouldn't know what I'm talking about.
We wasn't very good parents, Bob.
No, you guys, this is the thing, like a lot of people like, oh, your parents are weird, and like your parents are witches. Oh my God. I'm just like, it's okay. It was like a normal day if I would find a puppet in my freezer of a guy the thing is, being brought up the way I am, I'm teaching my children, who are men, to be more accepted and to be diverse and everything. And that's what we need in this world right now is, more people who will be like that and who will lead with kindness.
Well, our kids seen a lot at pagan events, so they knew about the LGBT long before it became really huge and everything. They knew about poly relationships.
They
knew about all that.
It was weird for me when people will show like hatred towards anybody who was different, because I'm like, that's my norm. What are you talking about?
No, my mom was a hippie art student and theater person. So like I like my first formative years were around like all of her theater people. And like she was doing like, nude artwork and nude modeling. Like there were so many things that were very normal for me. And then I like went, that was actually the weird part of my childhood, like things that people didn't accept, like psychic stuff. That's fine. The fact that I drew anatomically accurate mermaids and satyrs in kindergarten, that was not so cool.
Yeah. Because people were scared of like spirits and stuff growing up. I'm like, I have one that sleeps next to me each night. Wasn't healthy, but it happened.
Speaking of paranormal experience, what was one of the ones that probably scared you the most?
The most terrifying.
I mean, the most scarring was the psychic reading where I didn't realize that I was standing where someone had killed themselves, and like reading what had happened, what led up to that. You don't get to see any of that reading on that episode because we learned that it is possible to be psychic enough to infringe on privacy laws because it was related to 18 plus years of sexual abuse from a family member. So it was awful. And the only way I got confirmation from that was the sister was on the sidelines. She was there and she saw the reading, and like I come out of it, pull the blindfold off, and she looks at me, she's like, she's got tears in her eyes, and she's like, "You're the only one who knows." That one messed me up. Other things, like I've had profound experience, awe-inspiring experiences. When I was 17, I went into the woods here. I was, I did not fit in school. I had a lot of stuff going on. I had some ideas of what I was going to go do to myself in the woods. And it was one of those profound religious experiences where like the spirit of the land just sort of like was like, hey, come on, wise up. I had this communication that does not translate easily into words. I still have a relationship with that land spirit. It's one of the reasons I still live out here. And I wouldn't say it was scary, but it was something that steered the course of my life. Just a profound, like earth-shattering, world-shattering experience. It made me believe in just big things, much bigger than us. There was one experience on Paranormal State where the family alleged that there was a demonic influence and a possession happening. And again, I usually am brought in without knowing what's going on anywhere. And this one, I don't have an explanation for it. There was a person I met, and he looked to me a very specific way, physically. Like from my perspective, I'm meeting this guy who is associated with the house, and we're doing an investigation one night with him. And the next night, to my perception, there is a completely different, physically different person. And I'm referring to the guy I'd been talking to the day before, and everybody is now confused. And it comes out that this is the same person, and to my perception, they looked like two completely different human beings. Not a psychic impression, not a spiritual impression. Physically did not look like the same person. And the thing was he was the one who was accusing his wife of being possessed. And I'm like, oh no, she's being gaslit. That, if there is anything going on here, it's attached to that man. I don't know what it is. It's very big, and I'd really prefer not to mess with it because
I feel like dark spirits do that, though.
Yeah, I can't explain something, the physical change like that. I had, I don't know. I still don't have a good way of explaining how or why. I kind of noped out of that one. That was another one where the family was like, we do not like what you're saying, so we're just going to shoo you out.
You'll get that.
Too real, go away.
Because that's what the dark spirit that my cousin and I dealt with last year was trying to convince me that the spirits that was around me was evil, and I'm like, wait a second, no, they're not.
Go with your gut.
yeah, I'm like, no, I think you are completely wrong, and my intuition was right.
Yeah.
Well, and also go with like what something does as opposed to what it says. You know, if
Yeah.
the end result is, if it's always helped you, if it's never done harm to you, don't worry
Yeah.
about it.
Well, I
Right.
just let my, you know,
Right.
just that spirits are in my house. I just let them be. I'm like, as long as you're not harming me or my kids, we're good.
Yep. You're welcome to stay.
Yeah. Well, I also, I don't know if you feel like this, Michelle, because you've had experience since you've been a small child, right? Sometimes like if there's no spirits around me, I feel like it feels weird.
No,
So
I
used to
agree.
it.
And I've got an open door policy in this house too. Actually, the spirits themselves have a harder boundary about what is allowed in and out of the house than I
Yeah.
do. I'm just like, yeah, you know, whatever. Grand Central Station, it's fine.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't care as long as you're not evil and you're not gonna harm my kids.
Yeah, the rules here are just don't mess with the cats and
Yeah.
don't poke me while I'm sleeping.
I think like
that's a important one.
what I
Yeah,
hate is
sleeping is
when
very serious business. Leave me alone while I'm sleeping.
Yes.
what I don't like is when you first wake up and your eyes aren't open, but you see that spirit like staring right down on you when you're asleep. And it kind of feels like a suffocating. You know what I'm talking about? Yeah. I'm like, no, no, thank you.
What are some of your future adventures or projects? I should say projects you have coming up. Any new books? Any new television shows? Or
Well, I've been working doing remote viewings with Katrina Weidman and Heather Taddy from Paranormal State, and that's all on a YouTube channel. And the show is called Travel the Dead. The most recent one, we got to do an investigation of Bobby Mackey's before the place got torn down. So we were like one of like maybe 3 groups that got in there, like right under the wire. So I've been working with them. I've got a book of past life journaling prompts coming out through Crossed Crow Books in the fall, and it's just called Past Life Prompts. And it is for self-directed past life work. I'm a big believer that past life stuff is very very important. It helps with understanding. Like, it's better to know where you're going if you know where you've been. And also, I'm a big believer that you are the one who should take that journey and do that exploration rather than have somebody dictate the stuff to you. So this is a workbook for that. And then my other fun stuff is I have a page for Dark Heart games. I write tabletop games and role-playing games and journaling games that are an intersection between role-playing and gaming and ritual and magic, and sort of explore the space in between those.
That's awesome.
And a lot of which are like solo journaling things that are basically like guided meditations. And that is on Itch.io. So if you look up Dark Heart, one word games, you can probably, you know, find all my little things. And that's just sort of like where I go to play. And again, explore that space in between myth making and storytelling and magic and creating things and shaping them into being.
I love that. Do you feel like, because you were talking about past lives, do you feel like a lot of people we have in our previous past lives that we meet again this life?
I do believe in soul groups. They can be good and they can be bad. Sometimes you're bound by psychic bungee cords because there's stuff you haven't sorted through yet.
Yeah.
I know a lot of people are like, oh, my soulmate, we're tied together. I'm like, but why are you tied together? Maybe there's just
Is it a
toxic have to work through
relationship?
It may not be a really good idea to fall in bed with this person until you figure out why you keep bumping into one another.
Yeah. I agree.
Because
someone you could think is a soulmate, and it's really just like a toxic lover from a past life that you just keep revisiting.
Yeah. You can't get rid of them.
Well, you can try.
You can try.
You can try to cut that cord.
My husband and I met when I was in a car accident when I was 14, almost 15, and we've been together ever since. We always tell everybody that we are soul contract by the gods. So
it's one of the like cheesy love stories ever.
But sometimes that's absolutely true, though. And you know, I do feel, at least my experience has been, my path winds back to people that I have known before in situations in order to revisit them or reframe them, find maybe a different way of doing it this time around, or to remind myself of a lesson and move into basically move it forward.
Yeah.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
agree.
We
talk about past lives a lot, so.
Oh yeah, we talk about a lot of stuff.
I was a very weird kid, and fortunately, again, that hippie mom was very open-minded to the fact that I talked about previous lives from the time I could talk.
Yeah.
And
or like going into
just
a location, you're like, I've been here before. Like, I know this. I know where to go, exactly where to go.
I was her favorite party favor because before this life, I was in, I died in Vietnam. And she had friends in Vietnam, and I had very vivid memories of that. And so, like, I would just start yammering on about it among her friends at Kent State. And yeah, I still remember those things, and other much older stuff too. But
yeah, I was,
pretty nice.
I believe I was like a Native American in a past life, because I went to a powwow when I was a young child, because my parents kind of took me everywhere. And I knew the chants right away, and I just felt them in a different way than everybody in my family did. And it's just like that older lady like knew me, and I just like kind of like melted into her energy in a way, you know what I mean? It felt like home in a way.
Yeah. No, when you feel that, like, it's unmistakable. It's unmistakable.
Well, it's been amazing talking to you. I mean, we can probably chat more and more, but I know we each have a life, so.
Well, I want to also thank you, because I've been watching your show since I've been a small child, and you've always, I don't know, I've spoken to other people with abilities who are sensitive, and your type of shows and the knowledge you share definitely make us feel like less alone.
Yeah.
That was the whole reason I did it. It wasn't because they were paying me.
Well, we want to thank you for that.
No, Paranormal State, originally, they weren't paying me at all. Like, I was there because we needed someone there to represent views that weren't just like demon hunter Catholic. Like, I was there. I was requested by Elfie and a couple of other people to be a spokesperson and to offer a different perspective. And I take that kind of work very seriously.
Oh yeah. Well, we want to thank you for coming on.
Thank you.
Just stay for a couple of minutes while we end the stream. And for everybody in the audience, subscribe, share, and like, please. And thank you, Em, for coming on.
Yeah, thank you.